Hello everyone, welcome back to Bayou Reels, which is the YouTube channel for my business, BAYOURATT Reel Service. Today we're working on a Shimano, surprise, Calcutta 200B. Tough little reels, but as you can see the handle's already apart because my customer for this reel, tried to mess with this reel while on the boat and drop the nut retainer, the screw for the nut retainer, and the friction ring overboard. So we are going to be starting with the handle already off. Now the first thing that I'm going to want to do, sorry for the squeaky chair. First thing I'm going to do is take the star drag off. Underneath the star drag is some preload drag washers. Now from here, so like I said, my customer fiddled with this reel while on the boat, dropped some parts overboard, so I don't necessarily know what I'm gonna find or really not find in this reel that might be missing. The first thing on this 200B that's a little bit different than other size Calcuttas is this screw cap here, not the two that had the groove for the flathead screwdriver, but this third one here. We're gonna loosen that, which should loosen the palm side plate open. Okay, so once you do that all the way, unscrew this one all the way, you can kind of jiggle it and feel that it's not touching anything. You should be able to take these other two off. If they're tight, you can use a flathead to break them loose, but you should be able to just take them off. Now it's worth noting that these three, the first one I took off and these other two, are not going to fall out. They're retained inside this side plate. So now that we have all three of them loose, we should be able to lift up on the handle side plate and it come off, which it's doing. Now the whole thing, drive gear, drag washers, brakes, cams, everything's going to be contained in what's called, this black piece is called a set plate. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put that aside and I'm going to start to work on the rest of this reel. Now the first thing that I can do is, from the handle side, is I can pull this spool out, give it a little wipe. Now if you have one of these bearing pin pullers, you can use it here because there is a bearing on this spool shaft. If you don't have one of these, they also make a set of pliers that you could buy from Boca. Some people like these pliers. I like these Bass Zone pin pullers. Oh, this one, I forgot, is broken. That's okay. I have a couple of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push that pin out that retains that bearing on the spool shaft. Push it all the way out. Put my handle back in some. And then when I lift this up, there's the pin. Now what I do, if you've seen any of my other videos, I use this white paper towel, is I peel one layer of paper towel back, I push this in, put that underneath, put the paper towel over it. That's so I don't lose it. I can take this bearing off and set the spool down. There's another bearing. What I really would like to do is take this palm side plate off, but I don't remember right off how it comes out. Oh, I see it. Okay, so we're gonna have to do a couple of things to this reel before we can take that side plate off. The first thing I'm gonna do is take this E-clip off so that I can take the thumb bar off and out. Of course, it fell inside the reel. There it is. So take that E-clip off. I'm gonna take this brass washer off, and then the thumb bar gets to be kind of loose. You can take this black plastic shroud off. That's going to expose the guide pin, which is on the underneath of the thumb bar. Now I'm going to tell you that these reels are a pain to reassemble, mostly because of that. That's the first part that's difficult. So take the thumb bar off. There's also another wear plate. This wear plate came from the inside of the reel right here. Now that the thumb bar is off, what we've exposed is the E-clip for this shaft, which is what the palm plate is on. So I'm going to rotate that in such a way that I can take that E-clip off. It's hard to get a shot of it. So that E-clip is off. I know that that one is smaller than the larger one, and so it's for the plate. Now that palm plate should come off. It does have a spring on it. Now this reel is kind of dirty. You can definitely see some salt water. I'll set that aside, and then what we're left with is the worm gear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to take the worm gear apart. The first thing I'm going to do is rotate this gear to the line guide is all the way to the palm side of the plate, palm side of the face of the reel here. And then I'm going to use my Phillips head screwdriver to take this screw out here so that I can take this plate out. Nope. This is the worm gear. I'm going to take this plate out. Now that that plate's out, I can put my finger over the gear, flip the reel over, and try to push that guide pin through. Now I can see that there's some buildup in there. But I should be able to push it through. Yep. So that line guide shaft. So it's a guide shaft for the line guide. Now that's out, I should be able to rotate this enough to slide this kind of loose. I'm gonna use a flathead screwdriver to take this pawl cap off, which shows signs of saltwater use because I don't know if it's coming up on the camera too well, but it's got that aquamarine, surf green buildup that salt water will get on metal parts. Then I'm going to take, there's a small washer, and then the pawl. Now that that's out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this whole thing back all the way through the reel as much as I can. Then I'm going to rotate to get that E-clip in a position to where I can remove it. Now I have to hold it with my finger on the opposite side of the reel, which is making it a little more difficult than it should be. Let me set it down here a little bit. Yeah, that E-clip's coming out now. So I got the E-clip off. Now I can start to pull this worm gear through. Now what's going to have to happen is there's a plastic bushing and a brass washer here. Oh. So here's the brass washer and the plastic bushing that comes off of the palm side. If you look at that plastic bushing, it's grooved for this sleeve here. Put that aside here. Then we're going to pull it the rest of the way through, and that line guide's just going to fall off. So there's your line guide. Here's the rest of your worm gear, so that shroud comes off, and then this other plastic bushing comes out, which you'll notice on the surface of it that faces the gear as you took it off has a flat section sort of milled down, and that's for this plate right here. And then the other side will be grooved for the shroud, just like the other plate, just like the other plastic bushing. This gear is not going to come off. This is pushed fit on, and they smashed this head off on, so you can't take it off, which is fine. Now what's left in the body of the reel is a bearing on the palm side, but we have to go in from the inside of the reel. It does have a retainer clip, and so I put my finger over a part of the hole so I can start to dig that retainer clip out so it doesn't shoot out. Now that retainer clip came out. That's for the palm side, and then let's see, and then you can go in from the palm side of the plate and push gently off the back. The bearing falls out, and then it's going to fall out upside down, but you have a brass washer and then this compression plate. And then all you're left with is the body of the reel here. Now, next we're going to start taking out all the components are major, but what you have is this set plate, and everything is inside of the set plate. Your drive shaft, which has your anti-reverse bearing in your sleeve, with your drive gear, your anti-reverse pawl, drag washers, your cams, your brakes, your release, your pinion gear, everything is inside. So in order to separate this set plate from this outside plate, is you have to take these two screws out. 1, 2. Should be Phillips head screws. One and 2. Now this thing does have a little spring in it, but that's fine. So what I do is I set it down. I hold just the plate, not touching the set plate, but just touching the outside side plate, and push down on the drive shaft to lift it up. Now what I'll see is that the sleeve stayed inside the anti-reverse bearing, so you can take the sleeve out, and then I'm going to push the anti-reverse bearing out, because I'm going to clean that. So here's your anti-reverse bearing. From here, I'm going to take the spool tension cap off. I'm going to remove this bearing by removing this retainer clip. Again, put my finger over the hole, scooping that retainer clip out. I put my finger over the hole so it doesn't shoot out because it is under tension. I'm definitely gonna have to replace this bearing because I can see there's rust on the actual balls, and maybe even that retainer clip, depending on how it cleans up. Oh yeah, that bearing is seized in there. There we go. This bearing is seized. That's gonna have to be replaced. This bearing up the spool is seized. That's gonna have to be replaced. And so that's it for the handle side plate. Now we're gonna start working on the set plate. The first thing I do is I take these two posts, these two springs out for the yoke plate. I'll have to create me a new section here. Take the two springs out for the yoke plate. And then I'm gonna pull the main drive gear off. What I do is I sort of push up on it with my index finger and my thumb while turning the drive shaft, and it should start to lift up and away. Maybe not. What I'm gonna do actually is I'm gonna lift up on the yoke plate and pull the yoke plate and the pinion gear out if I can. Get them out of the way. See that old grease on that yoke plate? It's turning that dirty brown. So let's see if I can pull this drive gear off at all. Okay, so the drive shaft is not coming off the way I normally take it off. So another trick here is to flip the set plate over and remove this E-clip right here that's holding the bottom of the drive shaft on. So I'm going to take that E-clip off at this time. It's magnetized. And then also remove this brass ring if I can get it off. But the whole drive shaft should come out. That's that brass ring. So I pulled the whole drive shaft out. Now I should be able to, let's see, there we go. So this top metal drag washer and the black drag, well, it's not really rubber, it's like a composite that came out. So now there's less issue with something that may be causing a friction and causing it to resist. I'm just wiping this out a little bit. And then so what I should be able to do is hold the drive gear and turn the drive shaft and push. There we go. And so that's what I was doing while it was still inside the reel. Trying to do while it was still inside the reel, but it really wasn't working out. So there's the drive gear. I don't see any broken teeth, but I'm going to inspect it further after I clean it. Next is a smaller washer which goes in between the drive gear and the ratchet gear. Then you have the ratchet gear, and then the way this was on, this came off of the bottom. So if you pull this plastic gear up, which is called the idle gear, you'll notice that it's cupped, and the cup side has a brass washer in it. But that cup side also goes down towards the reel. So if this side is cupped, you want to flip it over to the uncupped side, put the drive shaft on, put that brass washer on, and then put it in. So that's a part. Back to the set plate. First thing you can take off here is the anti-reverse pawl off of that pin, which is what interacts with this ratchet gear here. And so what happens is whenever you try to turn your handle backwards, this pawl stops it, but you turn your handle forward, this pawl skips on those gears. But when you try to go backwards, it catches. Now what's left here is the cam system. So the first thing I'm going to do is at the top here, this spring is on a pin, and I'm going to pull that spring off the pin to release some tension and pull that pin out, and then take the spring out. Next, I'm going to remove these two screws that hold this metal ring in place and keeps everything tight. So there's the two small screws. There's the metal ring. So now that the metal ring is out, I'm going to use a small screwdriver to start to pry this white plastic cam out. But what I'm doing is I'm putting my finger over this metal kick-out arm, which is spring-loaded. So I can take this out. This will release some tension to pull the metal kick-out arm out. Put that here. Now what you need to watch for here is this brass insert. Sometimes they stay in, sometimes they come out. Some tight tolerances so they don't always stick in there. But what I do is I check it to see if it wants to stick, but if it doesn't, I take it out, because you want to make sure you don't lose that. And then here is the arm for the thumb bar. You have to sort of lift up and push it out at an angle through the bottom, and then it comes out through the bottom. This spring for the kick out arm, you're not going to be able to remove because it has this pressed cap retainer to hold it in place right here. Let me get close here. So this metal push cap is on this plastic pin that's holding this spring on. Leave this on, because to take this off you're gonna have to cut it and break it, and you really run a high risk of breaking that plastic pin, and then you gotta get a whole new set plate. And they don't really make set plates for these anymore. They're only available on eBay or somebody who might have some new old stock, like small parts repair shops. You're not gonna be able to get this from Shimano. They're really hard to find, or any of the popular places to get real parts. They really don't have them anymore. So one of the last things I'm gonna take off is where this drive shaft went. There's a brass ring that goes in from the bottom. That came out. And then this idler gear you can remove because it's retained with an E-clip, and it's really dirty. So I'm going to take that E-clip out. It's smaller than the E-clip that retains the drive shaft. And then take this idler gear off. And now your set plate's disassembled. And now the whole reel is disassembled. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down what parts this guy needs. That bearing is in bad shape too. So this reel's been disassembled. So you can see I have the bearings here in this top corner. So here are the bearings, including the anti-reverse bearing. Shimano has a lot of the not old, but like late 90s, early 2000s models have a redundant anti-reverse system. So the first thing is this anti-reverse bearing. The second part is this anti-reverse pawl that interacts with this ratchet gear, but the ratchet gear also interacts with the kick-out arm. So this is all my drive shaft and drive gear system, including the this idle gear. This is my line guide system. This is my brakes, my brake and cam and yoke plate system. Here I also have my thumb bar, and then everything else, the 2 side plates, the preloaded drag washers, the drag star, and the handle. I don't have the handle and the nut because the guy dropped it overboard. So I'm gonna get this all cleaned up, and then when we come back, the next video for this reel, it'll be reassembled. Just if you can, please like the video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. If you already subscribed, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm gonna link my Facebook page down for my reel business, and if you have any issues with your reels, we can maybe try to troubleshoot it through the messaging on the Facebook business page. But I really appreciate it. I hope this helps.